Blockbuster day in this case, where we now have someone behind bars for the 1996 murder of hip-hop artist Tupac Shakur. It's been dominating the headlines all day long. A grand jury in Las Vegas has indicted this man right here, that is Dwayne "Keefe D. Davis, on one count of murder. He's right here beside me. Prosecutors say they've known about him for quite some time, but new developments in this case have now gotten them to this point. So here's what they had to say at a press conference earlier today.
This is the indictment we've been waiting almost 3 decades for. It spells out the facts and circumstances and what justifies a Clark County grand jury in returning an indictment. Justice will be served.
Justice will be served. We still have to get to the court proceedings and get that far, but Davis, again, was known to prosecutors for quite some time. And the video you're looking at here was from back in July when they paid him a visit. So we'll have some more information on that. They raided his home in Vegas and they got some more information. And then here we are to this point. Again, they got a laptop, I believe. They also had some firearms, some bullets, and more information. Let's bring it back out here and let's get you guys caught up to speed. All right. So you just heard that soundbite from the DA, right? So and he basically showed you guys this document right here. These are the charging documents that law enforcement were able to kind of dissect and dive into to give us a better understanding of what happened in this case. And I'm going to go over some of the highlights for you, okay? Let's start with the very beginning. According to law enforcement, Death Row Records and Suge Knight, along with Tupac Shakur, had ties, or were affiliated to some degree with the Mob Piru gang. And then on the other side, you had this guy again, Dwayne "Keefe D. Davis, and they say he was the leader of the Southside Compton Crips. So let's fast forward now to that fight, that boxing match, Mike Tyson, 1996. It took place at the MGM. At the MGM, both sides attended that boxing match. Then you go to the elevator area. Now, this man, again, Keefe D. Davis, his nephew, Orlando Anderson, he was basically punched and kicked by members of that Mob Piru gang, police say, which included Suge Knight and Tupac Shakur. Now, after that fight, that video, a lot of people have already seen now for decades. We've seen that video. And then after that fight, according to police, Tupac and Suge Knight were heading to an after party. That's one side. That's what's happening on this side. On the other side, Dwayne "Keefe D. Davis came up, according to police. He orchestrated a plan to get some get back, if you will. And that's when things really started to progress. Police say he devised the plan to retaliate. He got a gun, and then he, along with 3 others, hopped in a white Cadillac. And then they caught up with Suge Knight and Tupac Shakur and then fired multiple shots. Tupac was taken to the hospital. He unfortunately died 6 days later. Detectives knew all of that information I just rattled off to you. They said they knew that for decades, right? Multiple different detectives have been working on this case. And they knew that information, but they just didn't have the evidence, they say. It's one thing to have the information from a law enforcement standpoint, but it's another thing for a prosecutor to bring that information into the court of law and then be able to hit those points that could lead to a guilty conviction. And in so many words, this guy told on himself. Back in, I believe it was 2018 or 2019, he wrote a book and released a book. It's called Compton Street Legend. And in that book, he says he was in the car where those gunshots erupted from that ultimately killed Tupac Shakur and wounded Suge Knight. And that's really what reinvigorated this case here back in 2018, 2019. And police really just jumped on it from there. In July, they paid his wife's house. They raided his wife's house. And again, they got some computers, some bullets, some other documents, some photographs, all that information, and that led us to this point. And one thing I want to hammer home, too, as I look more into these documents, police were saying today that there's a saying where you say late justice is justice denied. They said that's not the case here. This, in fact, is justice coming to the forefront because over the years, they say a lot of people believe that the Las Vegas Police Department didn't care about this case. They didn't think it was important for them to solve this case because, again, it's close to 3 decades later, and here we are this day. But they say that's not the case. They have cared about this from the very beginning. So now, let's jump into Coco Dominguez. Coco, if you don't mind joining me here, because Coco knows a lot of people. You have met a lot of people in your day, including Tupac. So we want to have this conversation with you. Tell me about that time when you actually had a chance to meet Tupac.
So I met Tupac in 1995, which was the year prior to his passing. I'm a huge boxing fan, so I would love to go to the MGM and watch Mike Tyson fight. That was a thing in the 90s. And Tupac would come out and bring him out. That was, you know. So I went to the Tyson and McNeely fight. It ended in the first round, that fight, but we know Tyson's quick with it. So there's always an after party at Club 662, which is the same place that he attempted to go to that night. So that club is more... I won't say it's more red, but that's what it was that evening. We'll just kind of leave it like that. So we knew that in order to get in, because we had been to some fights before, you have to really kind of get there early because Tyson is quick, and then people make their way there. So there's a back way that goes to 662. You don't have to take the main Las Vegas strip. You don't have to go there. There's a back way, and everyone who would come in from LA, everybody knows you go the back strip afterwards to go to the club, so you can kind of avoid some of the traffic. So I had some girlfriends, they knew we wanted to go down there, so let's get there early, let's get a good table. We get there, you know, and the vibe is kind of coming in, people are starting to come in from the fight, and here comes Tupac, Mike Tyson, Forrest Whitaker. I mean, all of the big names were coming through. So we are sitting on this side. It's kind of a level like a, not VIP area. The VIP was almost a hallway right across from us. So my girlfriends and I, we have this table right here, and we're watching them walk in. So they walk in and kind of go over to the, so now we are probably about 4 feet away where Tupac is, and, you know, and his guests are coming in. And so I'm just kind of like, oh, there he is. And, you know, we're all giggling or whatever. It's Tupac in the 90s, you know. So I'm looking, and he's looking at me, and he's going, what? What? And I was like, what are you saying? He goes, he pointed, and I look, and my girlfriends are going, yeah, talk to her, it was whatever. I was like, oh my God. I was like, just stop. So everybody's laughing, and we carried on, and that was it. The club got crowded really quick. So I'm like, oh, I don't even know if I'll get to talk to him or whatever. Let's just carry on the night. So we carried on throughout the night, and at this point, it's getting a little later, and my girlfriend's like, oh, I'm gonna go over there, 2 of them. They're gonna go over there to this other area. I said, okay, I'll stay here at the table, and then I was like, let me go find them. So I'm walking through, trying to make my way to them, and this tells a lot about kind of where he was in his life. So I'm walking through, kind of scooting down, just making it through the crowd, and I'm like, excuse me, and I look up, and it's Tupac and his bodyguard. But his bodyguard is holding him from the inside of his pants. That's how he has a grip on him. So he's walking with him with a grip on his hands. So I don't know if someone's going to try to snatch him, someone's going to get it, or Tupac was ready to go at times, so maybe kind of restraining him. So, and I was like, oh, hello. That's all I could do. I always said what I would say, but all I said was, hello. He's like, hey, how you doing? So he may have remembered me from the embarrassment my friends caused. This whole thing, So he's like, hey, how you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm good. How are you? He's like, oh, you know how they are, just trying to keep me moving, is what he says. I was like, all right, well, have a great night. That was it. That was the end of what I said. So that was my moment that I met him. But you can tell at that point in his life, he was already kind of being held for a reason. There was a lot happening in the 90s, and a lot happened at those events. So I was able to meet him on that time, and it's just what I thought I knew about him as a fan, as what I thought I was one of the biggest fans. I'm learning that I probably knew 20% of what I even know, and that's because of this book that's coming out. Stacey Robinson, she's the author. Now, this book is called The Authorized Biography, Tupac Shakur. It's the only and the first estate authorized book. 20 years in the making. It's supposed to be released in October. So I've kind of made my way halfway through it. And the things that I've learned about him, it's a slap in the face to call him a rapper. It is a slap in the face because he was so much more. I mean, I've made myself some notes here. It's just some of the things that we're learning. And this is Stacey Robinson. So this, just so you know a little bit about the author. This author, she's the one that did Tupac Remembered, Bearing Witness to a Life and Legacy. She also did the FX documentary recently, The Dear Mama. It's the same lady. She's doing all those. And Afeni Shakur, which is Tupac's mom, is the one that asked her to write this about her son. She wanted them to know who he really was.
Wow. So I would imagine just reading that and just having the moment today, the emotions are there for you today.
They really are there because we wanted answers for a long time. I personally wanted answers. I was a radio DJ. I don't know if a lot of you, I've been a long-time radio DJ here for about 17 years, and I did hip-hop. And so I remember Suge Knight coming to the station, and it was a whole ordeal. He was here, and this is after it happened. It was his first appearance through the city. And he stops over at another radio station first, and they're like, okay, he's on his way here, but a lot of the tires were slashed.
Wow.
We found out they made him put his cigar out in the studio, and then all of a sudden some tires were slashed. So everybody's like, what's happening? What's he mad about? So he comes over to the station, and he has a cigar half put out. So that kind of tells you that was the story at the first place. So he walks in, and I'm on there with Mean Green. I had the midday show at the time, and major player Mean Green, he had the afternoon drive. And so everybody's taking pictures. We do all of our entourage pictures, and then everyone goes into the hallway, getting ready for the afternoon for the interview with him, which he was going to do. I had already done my midday shift. So we get in there, and when I knew he was on his way, I was telling Mean Green, oh, I can't wait for him to get here. I'm going to ask him this. I'm going to ask him that. I was like, this is my chance on behalf of everyone. He's never been asked anything about it. So I asked him. So once we got in there, everybody goes outside, and Mean Green says, Coco got something she want to ask you. I was like, this is it. This is my moment. Suge Knight is all of, how big he is. We've been showing. But at this point, I was like, take me. I need to know, So I asked him, and the only thing I wanted to know was, why would you take Tupac down the main strip after he just got in a fight, knowing there's a back way? Everyone knows there's a back way. All of the bodyguards were stripped of him and sent on to the club. So for a long time, people were, what's going on with Suge?
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, there was a lot going on, and a lot of people's eyes were on Suge. I mean, we'll ultimately know when everything comes out, how it all unfolds, so I'm not saying any of that. But I wanted to know, why would you take him down? And he looked at me. He had a cigar in his hand, and he looks at Mean Green, and he looks at me like, who is this, And he kind of just stands there. It was just silence. He stood there, and he took a step back with his cigar and just kind of looked at me up and down and just shook his head. And it was probably about 30 to 40 seconds of silence. He didn't want to say anything. So I told Mean Green, I said, have a great interview. I'm done here. And I walked out, but at least knowing, I just wanted to know, like everybody wanted to know. So here we are, 50 years of hip-hop anniversary, and this comes out of nowhere because the Vegas police is right. We did thought they didn't care. We did thought oh, there's so much more important. If it was such and such, they would have looked into it. What about but we thought no one cared. And a lot of people did care, and they did continue.
And they were saying today when they started that press conference, they were like, 27 years. They kept saying 27 years, and they were talking about from the police department standpoint, all that stuff I rattled off earlier about what he announced today, they said they knew that in the first 72 hours. They had all that information, but it wasn't until this guy opened his mouth, in his book and said some things. That's how come we are here where we are today, but it doesn't make this situation any less surprising.
It doesn't.
This is, when I heard about it this morning, my mind just absolutely blown. And now you're reading this book.
And I just kind of want to, and this is supposed to come out on October the 24th. So this is an advanced uncorrected proofs copy. So I'm thinking, is Stacey going back in to add an ending? Now that we have somewhat that will be an ending. Do you know what I'm saying? So that's up to her. But some of the things that I've learned, like I'm saying, if you've been a Tupac fan, there are things that you thought, oh, I knew this, I've watched every detail, every documentary. We did not know any of that. Tupac was smarter than we could. And I'll just tell you guys a couple of the things. So in this book, you're going to see private note letters, unpublished lyrics. Since he was 8 years old, 11 years old, his mom was a Black Panther. Tupac was a revolutionist. He was a thespian. He could recite Moby Dick, Roots, Macbeth. He wanted to perform. He was a theater junkie. He did ballet. That's why we all know he talked to Jada Pinkett when they were friends at the school, a Baltimore School of Arts. That's where his mother wanted him. She said, an education is the only thing you'll do. You won't ask for money. You won't get anything from the government. The government is not on our side, and I refuse to ask for anything from them because they were, against, they were fighting oppression. He was crying out loud in the footsteps of his mother. They had this bond where that's why, a lot of the times when we thought he was paranoid, oh, the cops are coming to get me, it was a lot of his lyrics make more sense than ever before. And so those are some of the things that I'm learning, but it all began, and it takes you in this book, it takes you back to the 60s, the civil rights movements, when it first started. The story of Tupac started before Tupac was born. He became a Shakur. His mother was a Williams. So he became a Shakur. And the Shakur name carries a lot of weight, and it has always carried weight. I do want to kind of take some of these comments, but it's just, there's so much going on with how everything unfolded.
And let's see here. This one person, Amy Joy, thank you so much for watching this via live stream on our Facebook page. This Amy says, best news ever. And it says, what did Keefe D expect? That is a great question. What did this guy really expect? He said this in interviews, you know what I mean? He was in the car, he wrote it in his book. And at the end of the day, that takes a lot of, you kind of have to not care. You know what I mean? And
I think he wanted to be known as the man who took Tupac out, who murdered Tupac, the most prolific individual. Like I said, I won't even call him a rapper anymore. He was and people, he was into drugs, his friends, and you'll read it. And I'm only halfway through the book. This is just halfway through the book. Right. And they would say, he was a drug dealer. He couldn't even sell drugs. He would be like, you're not going to pay me? Don't worry about it. The drug dealer was like, never mind. You're not cut for this. He wouldn't steal. There were certain things that he had values, and that's what his mother taught him. So he was much more, he did ballet. Do you know what I'm saying?
He was very, 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 very comfortable with himself. And I think for me, even too, as just like someone who appreciates music, right? You listen to some of Tupac's songs, and it really just echoes what you've been saying, because when you talk about Dear Mama, he talks about the love and the compassion and the way he just loves his mother so deeply, even though you might look at her life and you might say she might have had her own ups and downs. He doesn't fault her for anything like that. He loves his mother unconditionally. Other songs he has just talks about, if there are women out there going through hard times, whether it's not being able to pay the bills, or he tells even men, like, why are you raping women? Why are you taking advantage of women? Why are you doing things that are counterproductive to the family and the family unit as a whole? So it's just as a listener, and someone who appreciates music and loves him for what he talked about. And even in the early 90s, Coco, people weren't really rapping about that kind of stuff.
No, they had the knowledge rap when it was out of New York,
right.
When people were doing that, but they weren't fighting oppression the way he was. He would put flyers out and be passing out flyers to anyone who would listen to him. Because he was really, that's what his mother raised him on, these values. She was pregnant with him in jail. Do you know what I'm saying? So those are things that people already know. But when it digs deep into, his punishments were reading the New York Times since he was a kid. So it just involved him in this political world of getting to know what's happening to us, why are we going through this, and taking it back to slavery. He had it all figured out, and it was just really just amazing. All right, let's take some comments.
What else we got? Go ahead.
Liliana Feliciano says, very intellectual person. Yes, that he definitely was. And a lot of people really, they can't believe it. This came out of nowhere.
Nowhere. Like nowhere. Nowhere. And Tupac had such a great life. If you look at a quick timeline of his life and how he got into the industry, he went to California in 1988. He moved there. He signed with Digital Underground 2 years later. His debut album was released in 1991. And, his career just continued to take off from there. In 94, had that scare. He was shot 5 times and robbed in Manhattan and survived. And then, had some other run-ins, whatever the case may be. But I think, like, when you really sit down, Coco, I got to agree with you. He was so much more than just a rapper.
Yeah, and that's what, unfortunately, those are the things that have highlighted what we see as, he went to jail, he was doing this. All they show is him spitting at the camera, leaving court. Do you know what I'm saying? You see this part, but you don't see what he tried to do up until this point. So it's really... it's just really a wonder. It's just what this book is going to be. And I'm halfway through it, you know, and there's so much more to learn. And there are poems, but because before he wrote lyrics, he wrote poetry.
Right.
That's what he was writing. He loved music, but it was poetry. That's what it was. He went to poetry sessions, you know, he wasn't skipping school to, you know, there were times where his mother was addicted and he wasn't skipping school to go and be in the streets. He would go to a poetry class an hour and a half away to try and learn more. These are the kind of things that, you know, that they were so poor. I mean, when I say poor, I'm like the same pair of pants. Everybody's seen that video recently that Jada and him dancing, doing the, you know, he's got the Gumby and all that stuff. And now I look at those pants different. Those pants were stapled up. It was the only pair of pants he had for a while. You know, he was just trying to rise above poverty, but not just on his own. He wanted to bring his people up.
Man, this is just a historic day.
It is.
For whether or not you are a fan of hip hop or not, this case has been open now for 27 years. It is now hopefully moving towards some closure because, again, this man we see beside me here, that is Dwayne Keefe D. Davis. He is the only person that is still alive that was in that white Cadillac that shot up the car that Tupac was in and ultimately took his life. So hopefully the family of Tupac Shakur, those that love him, hopefully get some closure. Coco, any final closing thoughts here?
No, I do want to mention a story. So the last time I was almost at his show was the House of Blues. We all have heard about that July 4th concert in '96. It was the 2 months before he passed. So we were in California. It's on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood, and the House of Blues. We bought tickets, and we were getting ready to go to the show. And my friend, she went and got the car washed, and they stole the tickets. They stole the tickets. Oh, we cried. They stole the tickets. And so we were like, all we can do is try to go buy more. So we go to the House of Blues. This is how much we wanted to see him. They wouldn't let you pay any amount. So we were outside watching it on the screens while he was, you know, inside. But little did we know that the next fight, 2 months later, would be his last. And that was his last performance. At the House of Blues. So there's a lot of things. There's also a video that came out recently that's kind of circulating that shows a little bit of them on the streets with Suge, you know, kind of after the fight that just came out this year. So it's good to know that his legacy is, I just hope that people really get a chance to see who he really was. Because I'm learning, and like I said, I thought I knew everything about him. I mean, I want to go back and listen to the music, and I'll listen to it differently now. You know, like I said, to call him a rapper is a slap in the face for him and for everything he tried to do.
And again, this book, when is it coming out?
So they have it for October the 24th. Tupac Shakur, the authorized biography. It's by Stacey Robinson. So hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to Stacey. She wasn't available today. And there's a lot. And I will let you know, I have a lot of friends who are hip hop artists. And so I did reach out to a couple of them today. And a lot of people, they don't want to talk about it. Because ultimately, and I've heard it from them, it's a gang. It's a murder with gangs. Speaking out against or for someone could ultimately put you in the spotlight with these gang members. Because ultimately that's what it is. Whether he's gone or not, it's still a gang-related murder. And those members are still there. You know, so a lot of them didn't want to really put themselves in the mix like that. You know, with social media, the way it travels, you can kind of clip people and make them say what you want. But it's just, I'm just very happy that this day came. I'm happy that we're going to watch it unfold and we're going to see. But what I don't like is that this guy thinks he can take credit, the smile on his face to take, you know, credit or to be, that's what he wanted. If he goes to jail for the rest of his life, it's like, I'll be known. You know, I just don't want it to be a good thing for him.
Again, if you guys are joining us on this live stream, we've been kind of just digging into the court documents and Coco sharing her personal experiences and when she met Tupac Shakur and even had very frank conversations with Suge Knight asking questions that people wanted to know. And if you guys missed any of this, we're going to post it on Fox Local. Fox Local is an app just like anything else you have on your smart TV where you can download that, you can watch
on
this
demand.
Again. On demand, basically, right?
Yes, just, you know, not Netflix and chill, like Fox Local and chill.
Fox Local and chill. All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining us. I'm Anthony Antoine, Coco Dominguez. We'll see you later.